I'm Heather from Here Booktubes, and today is why I like indie romances and authors the best. And so I think the very biggest misconception about indie romance is that it's inferior, that it's full of editing mistakes, and it's full of authors who just couldn't get published. They weren't good enough to get traditionally published. And so I want to kind of go against that. If you are familiar with my channel, you know that I love indie romance. It is definitely the primary thing that I read, and it's something that I really enjoy and believe in and value and would love for more people to give a chance. So the first part about authors maybe not being as good at writing or as good at editing or indie books being full of mistakes is pretty simply it depends on the individual author. Each author, whether traditionally published, self-published, or at an independent publishing house, they all have their own skill level and skill set, and even the editors, whether it is the author themselves or a different author, they also have their own skills levels and capabilities, and we're all also can make a mistake on a bad day, right? But the idea that all traditionally published authors are better than all indie authors is just ridiculous to me. It depends on the individual author, it depends on the work that they put into their craft and their skill, it depends on how quickly they're cranking out books or not, if they have any help. Obviously, money matters. It is one thing to say you should be paying all these people, and it's another thing to have the money to do that. So not everybody is going to pay for an editor or a beta reader or a sensitivity reader or any of the things. It really just kind of depends on the individual author. And I personally don't think that authors who do their own editing are automatically putting out a inferior product. I don't think that that's true. I do think that it depends on an individual basis, and I do think the more help that you can get, maybe the better. But traditionally published romances being mistake-free and being perfectly edited and just the perfectly crafted story is false. It's not a thing. The biggest reason why I love indie romances is because they don't have to be palatable for everyone. They don't have to be bland and generic and something that can sell millions of copies in order to justify and putting the story out. It can be very specific. If you want to do a story for people from Pennsylvania who would get these references, you can do that, and it doesn't have to have mass appeal. If you want to write Black romance, or if you want to write queer romance and you want to make it very specific to your experience, you can. And also you can kind of get straight to your target audience. So if you want to have a food dish in there and you don't want to have to describe it because the people who eat and love that food don't need it described to them, you don't have to, because you don't have to make it where you're explaining everything for all the people in the world. You can just go for your target audience. Your target audience is whoever enjoys your books. And also you can make it more explicit, you can make it more specific. You don't have to have it be kind of toned down or rated PG or PG-13. You can use whatever language that you want. You can have whatever scenes that you want. And even like the kinks and the dark romance tropes and the subgenres and the weird stuff with the zombies or the aliens. There are so many things that you can do in indie romances that you're just not going to get past a committee for traditional publishing. Another thing with indie romances, it doesn't have to be a specific length. You don't have to pad it and add in all this unnecessary stuff to reach your page count. If you want to publish 13-page erotic novella and sell it for $1, you can. And there are plenty of people, myself included, who will buy that 13 pages, and it doesn't have to be more than that. It doesn't even have to be in an anthology. It can just be by itself because that's the thing that you want and that is available to you. I personally think that if I had just been reading traditional romance all these years, I would already be done. I would not be a primarily romance reader. I would mix it in, but oftentimes they can be so formulaic and so long. You're reading a 300+ page book where they always have the conflict and the third act breakup at the 80% mark, and we can't get together before the 50% mark, and we just, we have to have these dumb reasons why we can't get together because we have to drag out. You don't have to do that in indie. A lot of times you can go more with what you enjoy. So maybe you do have a conflict, but it's not a breakup. Maybe you don't have a conflict at that point, or maybe the conflict is just external. You can have your romance be them together from the second page. You can have that take till the very last chapter. It doesn't matter. It's whatever the author chooses to do, and I find that it tends to be much fresher and much more unique and more true to the characters and their pacing, rather than just the publishing house says this is what we want and this is what you write. Also, a lot of times with traditional publishing, also you'll write the book that you're told to write. And again, with indies, I feel like often they write the story that won't leave them alone, or that lives in their head rent free and that they need to get on the page. And you just get to have so much more fun with it. If you want to write a dragon with 2 beans, you can. If you want to write non-binary fae that's 50 pages and under, you can. And that's just not something that is often a chance allowed to traditionally published authors. You can make it weird. You can do whatever you want, and I love that about it, because you don't know what you're gonna get. And oftentimes we'll get all these recommendations that are just like, it's like, what is that? I want to read it. I want to find out. I don't even think that I read that much weird romance, but I love that it can exist in the indie space, and that when something does really pique my interest, I can grab it and it will live up to my expectations because they didn't have to tame it down. Obviously, representation is huge. I feel like representation in indie books is top tier, is the place to be if you want to see diverse representation from authors who are writing their own experience or writing their own fantasies or whatever it is. You get all of these things that just aren't vanilla enough for traditional publishing. On top of that, traditional publishing has a huge problem with not having Black men on the cover or brown men on the cover. Most oftentimes you're going to have a white man as the hero, like the large majority of the time. And on top of that, your characters will sometimes be whitewashed, or the culture will have to be explained, because again, like, the white reader is the target audience, kind of regardless of who the author wants to be the target audience or who the characters are. For publishing, the white reader is still the target audience, and so everything kind of gets blanded out a little bit. Also, again, with queer, we just saw again an author being told that even though they're bi and they're writing a sapphic book because they're married to a man, they don't want the manuscript. And that just, if you do indie, you can kind of skip over so much of the racist and prejudiced and, own voices only stuff that really is a hindrance to authors and readers alike. I think it's a huge problem. I think the publishing is unfixable, basically. And the authors who do try and go through that, more power to you, trying to get your story out there. But so many times authors will go the indie route because they can write their book for their people, for their audience, for the younger version of themselves, or just the person whose mind works the same ways that theirs does. And it doesn't have to pass 12 white women in publishing. But I see a lot of things about, oh, I wish we had more of this. I wish we had more Black chefs in romance. I wish that we had father men in romance. I wish that we had shorter guys in romance. I wish that there was more sapphic. I wish that there was more BIPOC in paranormal and fantasy, and all of those things exist in the indie space. Not only do they exist, but they thrive, and there is a plethora to choose from. You don't have to just have one author who is trying to be representation for everybody. It's like, I need to see myself in your book because you're the only one that's getting published. In indie, you just have so much available to you, and I truly feel like it's where the best work is being done. As a avid romance reader, as somebody who reads literally hundreds of romance books in a year, indie romance is by far my favorite because they can do whatever they want. Also, on a completely personal side note, it's great to get to know indie authors and actually get to have some sort of online relationship with them. and promote their books and love their books. And when you find the one who writes exactly what you love, you can shout their names from the rooftops. There's so many amazing people who are publishing in indie romance that I follow on Twitter and on Instagram and on YouTube and interact with and enjoy so much. Has just been a huge perk to loving these books. Lastly, I just want to point out that indie is not for everyone. It's not something that just anybody can do just because anybody can do it. I feel like because people think, well, there's nobody stopping you from publishing your book, that means every Tom, Dick, and Sally are out here and they are, you know, putting forth inferior product that is just garbage. But I feel like, one, writing is hard. Most people who are incredibly bad at it probably don't waste their time writing books after their 9 to 5 all year long. I just feel like people need to understand sometimes that just because I could write an ebook and publish it does not mean anybody would read it, does not mean I would write it, because I can't write. I can't write stories. I am not an author. I am never going to be an author. Just because I can technically upload something does not mean that we are. I feel like, on top of that, indie readers are discerning. We're not going to say this book is amazing when it is literally just typo trash. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but being a self-published author or an indie author isn't a cop-out. It isn't easier. It isn't just, it's its own unique set of challenges. I feel like sometimes this is almost like the argument between working moms and stay-at-home moms, and it's like, no, there are really difficult things to both and there are perks to both, but they're just different. It's a different thing. One's not automatically better than the other. So basically, it's not easier, but the people who do choose to do it, they have so much more freedom to be able to tell their stories, and I, as a reader, really enjoy and appreciate that. They are what keep me interested in reading romance. They are all of the unique stories that I read, and I absolutely love it. I love it for the representation, for the happiness that it brings me, for the shorter lengths and the unique storylines, and the quick publishing rate that my authors tend to give me. I enjoy everything about indie authors. So if you have not read an indie romance or are trying to get into romance and have only picked up kind of the most popular book of the month romances, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. You should get into indie romance, especially if you don't like how formulaic traditional publishing can make the romances. So that's it. If you have a specific thing that you are looking for and would like a recommendation, comment and I'll try to point you in the right direction. But whatever you want, indie romance has it, and they're doing it top tier gold standards. So thanks so much for watching. Bye.